Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back for Chapter 32 of Book 1, Meridian. Last time, Einar and Sejana catch up and commiserate over losing crew under their command. Ludin arrives out of sorts, and he and Einar check on the progress of the engine repairs. After Einar returns from that task, Ayati joins them, introducing her friend Rez to the crew. They get to hear some stories about Ayati's Navy days, and Ayati invites Rez to join them, but Rez has a life on Gita that she's not yet ready to give up. The repairs are completed on the Wolf, and the ship departs, setting course for Equilon. The journey is uneventful, but unbeknownst to the crew, the Plithan hierarchy fleet arrives in the Bulis system shortly after the Wolf leaves it. Their mission is to capture a secret weapons facility belonging to Titan Corporation, one of the premier weapons manufacturers in the universe. Jason Valarek stares at the quick screen as alarm klaxons sound throughout the facility. He can't quite believe what's happening as a Plithan hierarchy fleet bears down on Cyprus. How do they find the facility, and more importantly, how do they get so close without being noticed? The rational part of his brain fills in the answer, because they drifted in on thrusters only, blending in with the asteroids around them. The first Cyprus realized there was anyone out there was when the defense emplacements bloomed into nothingness. More ships came to life, and assault craft were already on their way to the station. Jason, a soft voice beside him says, exuding a calm that seems unbelievable. Have you finished purging your systems? When he doesn't respond, a hand shakes him, snapping him out of his frozen state. What? He asks, looking over at Lysaeth Tosai, Cyprus's security director. The Duva woman shows more patience than he deserves, Jason realizes, as she says slowly, "Take a breath and focus. Have you finished purging your systems?" Glancing back at the display beneath the general security screen, he shakes his head. At 63%. Should be done in 2 minutes? Good, Lys says. Gear up. They'll be boarding in a moment, and we have to make sure the researchers get to the escape shuttles. How are they going to escape? Jason asks, pointing back at the display. There's a whole fleet out there. Lys shakes her head. That's for flight ops to worry about. Our job is to dump the memory cores and make sure the researchers aren't caught. Now get suited up. Jason steps away from his station, where the progress bar now reads 87%, and hurries over to the wall armory. A deuteronium security suit stands open, waiting for him as he steps into it, the panels closing around him, sealing him into the armor. As it boots, the HUD springs to life with a live update from the security feeds. The first assault shuttles have already landed, disgorging Plithan troops onto the platform. A cold sweat breaks out on Jason's brow as he blinks away the reports of fighting already streaming in. Grabbing the Titan sweeper from its cradle, he hurries back to his station where the quick screen is dark. The purge completed without him, and, for a moment, emptiness fills him. All set? Lys asks, appearing beside him in her own security suit. He nods. She turns to the other techs in the room. All right, team. This is why we get that hazard pay. Stay sharp, watch your corners, and stick together. Shouldering her rifle, she leads her team out of the Cyprus Security Command Center and into the chaos. The Howlin Wolf drops out of the jump in the Equilon system after another quiet day in transit. Sitting in her pilot's seat, Ayati pings the system comm buoy for Equilon's coordinates based on the anticipated rotation of the planet around its sun, and spools the astrodrive for in-system flight. The buoy returns a recommended flight path, along with an alert to be expecting a customs inspection upon arrival to the planet. Equilon might be an agricultural world, but unlike Strides, this system is full of vibrancy and technology. Signatures for other ships start to fill the quick, and Ayati scans for any familiar names, though nothing immediately jumps out at her. A small picket fleet of Cassidon Navy ships registers, patrolling out system. Transit to Equilon takes a couple hours, and by the time they arrive, they find a queue of ships waiting for the customs patrol ships to work through their list. Einar joins her on the bridge, and Ayati grins at him. Nice to be back to a more normal pace on things, wouldn't you say? Einar chuckles and nods. Never thought I'd miss waiting in line for customs. The patrols work through the queue with a pleasant efficiency, and when they board the Wolf, they find everything in order with all the documentation matching the cargo. The whole inspection takes less than 15 minutes, 5 of which includes exchanging pleasantries with the inspectors. With clearance to land bundled into the customs paperwork, the Howlin Wolf begins to descend toward the surface. As Ayati points the ship toward the planet's surface, the sheer amount of green and blue that fills the quickscreen can hardly be believed. With an atmosphere and topography very similar to old Earth, Equilon appears idyllic. As they break through the atmosphere, the vastness of the fields and oceans become overwhelming. The Wolf lopes over vast fields full of all manner of grains, orchards full of fruit, and lakes brimming with fish. Harvesters and other worker drones buzz along, collecting the plentiful abundance Equilon has to offer. Ayati brings the ship down onto a landing platform on the edge of Castile, the second largest city on this continent, and home to the largest market for ag equipment on this side of the planet. If there's goods to be bought and sold, they're going to be here. Once the ship is powered down, Einar and Ayati leave the bridge and pass through the common room. Sejana sits in her customary spot, reading from a quick screen. She glances up as they enter and nods. We're heading out to sell our cargo and look for new cargo, Einar says. You taking any contracts here? Sejana closes her eyes and rests her head against the wall. I'll check the board, of course. But I think I might sit this one out. Been an awful lot of excitement lately, and it would be nice to not be shot at for a few days. Einar chuckles and nods. Can't say I blame you. You want to come into town with us? Maybe tomorrow. In the meantime, I haven't allowed myself to indulge in a good book in a while, and this one has captivated my interest. Ayati perks up and says, Oh, what you reading? In the Emperor's Name. It's the most recent in the Helera Hathingson series. Ayati laughs and says, Not enough to live it, eh? Gotta read about life in the Imperial Navy? I'm just a grunt, remember. I wouldn't know anything about the extravagant lives of His Imperial Majesty's finest triarchants and the ships they command. Sejana replies with a small smile. Fine, well, you enjoy Miss Hathingson's adventures, Ayati says. But we should at least go for dinner as a crew one night while we're here. With this much fresh food, there's gotta be a foodie scene around. Sejana nods and says, Let's do that tomorrow. Ayati smiles and turns to the captain. Einar says, Sounds nice to me, but we need to go sell our cargo first. Once that is done and we're loaded back up, I'll feel a lot more ready to celebrate. Alright, first things first. I realized I made a slight error last time. I forgot that I imposed a half day of in-system travel time for scooping fuel on the journey out to Creus. So that trip from Gita to Equilon should actually have taken 4.5 days instead of 3 that I originally thought. And same for the trip from Equilon back to Cassidon. I don't think that's going to materially change anything, so I'm just going to update my calendar accordingly, which means it is the 18th of Kalim approaching evening rather than the morning of the 17th. Important to anyone but myself? Probably not, but here we are. All right, it's time to do some trading. I went back to Chapter 18, which is where Einar purchased goods on Creus to transport to Equilon. Seems a really long time ago. A lot has happened since then. So the Wolf is carrying 1 lot of major cargo at 60 tons and 2 lots of minor cargo at 10 tons each. Since Equilon is 4 parsecs away from Creus, that is 4,400 Ru per ton. That means the total value they'll receive is 352,000 Ru. Based on the rules I set in Chapter 18, what we're going to determine with this roll is how much Einar paid for the goods in Creus. So I'll have Einar roll a broker check, and if he fails the roll, he'll sell the cargo at a 15% margin. If he equals the TN of 8, it will be a standard 20% margin, and if he succeeds with any effect, it'll be a 25% margin. I think that will give us enough variance that it'll be worth rolling. His skill is a +1. But before we roll, I'm also instituting a new advancement rule, courtesy of Seth Skorkowski, who, if you don't know who that is and you enjoy Traveler, you should really go check out his YouTube channel. The Traveler Companion book has an XP system for assigning XP generated at the end of an adventure or a series of encounters. There's a table in the book for the number of XP and advancement in a skill or a characteristic takes. The Seth Skorkowski variation on that is this. The first time a character rolls a success on a skill, above an 8+ target number, easier checks don't count, they mark that skill. At the end of the term, which could be a session or an adventure, we will roll 1d6 -1 for each marked skill. If that roll equals or exceeds the current skill level, they get 1 XP to add to that skill. They also just generally get a free XP to add to any skill or characteristic. Advancement in Traveler is meant to be slow, and honestly, mostly it's about the equipment you possess rather than the stats and skills, but Traveler advancement does happen by training, and since I've opted to shorten the time frame between jumps, that can put a serious damper on any sort of training advancement. So we're going to give this a try and see how it works. Going back to the roll, it's at a target number of 8+, so a success will result in a marked skill. +1 to the roll. Let's go. 6 ain't gonna do it. So Einar sells the cargo at 15% margin. So he bought it in Creus for 299,200 Ru and clears 52,800 on the cargo. Not a gobstopping amount, but it more than covers the operation of the Wolf. They've cleared out the hold, so it only makes sense to see if there is cargo here that might be profitable to sell in Cassida. First, we need to roll another broker check to see how easy or hard it is for Einar to make contacts and find goods to buy. The effect of his roll will get added to the rolls I make to generate cargo. 7 total. Poor Einar. He's just not making any inroads here on Equilon. Either these people just don't like Huldrons, or maybe more likely a large cargo convoy just came through the system, and demand is a little bit lower than they might expect. I've got my bonuses factored, including the -1 for Einar's failure, so I'll make some rolls off mic and generate the possible cargo. We should also see if there are any passengers interested in traveling to Cassida. Since Equilon is a fairly advanced world, I think it's pretty likely, so I'm just going to say that yes, there are passengers here. Similar to the trading, we can roll on passengers for low berth, aka cryo freeze, to high passage. The Wolf, without a steward, can only take low or basic passengers. I don't think Einar is looking to hire anyone for this transit, so we'll just make those 2 rolls. Instead of Einar rolling a broker check, I think Ayati is in charge of finding passengers. She's going to roll her carouse skill of +1 to see who is looking for passage. Wow. Another 7. So that will apply a -1 to our passenger rolls as well. Just like with trade, I'll make some rolls off mic and then we'll envision it all in the narrative. Einar and Ayati leave the Wolf just as the sun is starting to fade in the distance. But they already checked the local quick and know that trading goes well into the night. The hyperrail takes them from the starport into Castile. It's clear with the sheer number of agricultural-related statues and names that the people of Equilon are proud of their status as the breadbasket for this sector of the Reaches. It's not Einar's first time on Equilon, but it has been a few years. Even with the changes in the universe, this planet has a way of making you forget those horrors. If you were ever considering retiring, Equilon would be pretty high on the list of places to settle. Shaking his head, Einar glances over at Ayati, who is also staring out the window.
What you thinking about, kid?
She blinks at him and shrugs. For a planet, it's pretty nice. I mean, I'd rather be up there, she points towards the sky. But if I had to live somewhere, I suppose I could do worse. Einar chuckles.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Ayati grins. Careful, Cap. We can't be getting soft now. We still got work to do.
Right you are.
His smile slips as he thinks about the fleet of hierarchy ships out there in the deep. All this peace could slip away. And once again, he considers whether he made the right decision. They pass the next 10 minutes in silence until the hyperrail reaches the market stop. Einar and Ayati emerge into a still bustling crowd, milling through an open bazaar between a handful of multi-story warehouse-style buildings. Weaving their way through the labyrinth of stalls and outdoor vendors, they reach the entrance to one of the large buildings. Emblazoned on the facade above the door are the world's Castilian Central Imports. The doors whoosh open as the pair approach, and a wave of sound rolls over them as hundreds of traders and importers dicker at a variety of kiosks throughout the open floor. Red and yellow banners hang from the ceiling, with queue adverts cycling through them. Alerts begin populating Einar's queue as the local quick reads his identity. He grunts and says,
All right, this is a bit much.
Beside him, Ayati slaps him on the shoulder and says, Cap, I'm gonna go get a drink. You got this.
Hey, keep an eye out for any passengers. I'd like to finish this trip strong since we're returning a little later than expected.
Ayati throws him a casual salute and saunters right back out into the bazaar. Einar squares his shoulders and pushes into the press. It takes him the better part of an hour to get in front of a broker for Woolrup Sershin, a company Zhang Imports has worked with before. The broker, a human woman in her late 60s, looks at him with an expectant frown, and Einar calls up the ship's manifest on his queue and flicks it over to the quick screen between them.
Einar Stargleam of the Howlin Wolf, representing Zhang Imports. We've got 60 tons of ag equipment coming in from Kraus, plus 20 tons of some sort of algal fertilizer. We're looking to offload and then fill the hold for our trip back to Cassida.
The broker looks over the details and says, All right, we can take these off your hands, but a Honorian convoy just came through and delivered a lot of equipment and cargo. Give me a moment. She turns on a privacy bubble and begins making calls. Einar knows this game, so he waits patiently for her to finish. When the privacy bubble dissipates, the broker says, Yeah, we'll take the whole cargo. I can give you $352 for it. Einar does some quick mental math and grimaces internally. Not as strong a return as he would like, but still a fair price for the goods. He nods.
I'll take it.
She returns the nod and says, I'll arrange pickup for tomorrow.
We're also looking to take cargo back to Cassida. I know you're on the import side, but if you have any leads on shipments going out, I'd be very grateful.
He strikes her with his most winning smile. She looks at him for barely 3 heartbeats before looking past him to the next person in line and saying, Next. Ayati finds her way to the Shooting Star, a spacer bar on the edge of the Castile market, and shoulders her way to the bar. Apparently, Castile has a lively nightlife as a couple hundred people dance the night away under the flashing lights and thumping sound of Duvan Technotica. At the bar, she orders a drink and tosses it back without tasting it. The burn hits right, so she orders up a second and starts to chat up the bartender. He points to a small group of people huddled around a table, vibing to the music but not giving themselves to the lure of the dance. Taking her second drink with her, Ayati approaches the table. 3 faces turn to her as she points toward an empty chair. Looks are passed around and then one of them nods. She grins and slides into the empty seat and raises her glass. The others toast as well. One of them leans forward and turns a dial on the table, dampening the sound of the music around them. A burly human with dark skin and dark hair says, Hi. Ayati smiles at him. Hey, I heard y'all were looking for passage to Cassida. My ship is looking to take on passengers. Could be able to help each other out. He looks around at the others and then back to her, a big smile splashing across his face. That's good news. Yes, we're trying to make it to Cassida. What is your ship? Let's make a quick roll on the random passenger table to get a sense for who this group might be. D66 table, here we go. 1 and 1. A political refugee. Now that's interesting. I've got an idea where a political refugee may be coming from, too. Ayati says, the Howlin Wolf, we're a cargo transport for Zhang Imports. Not the finest accommodations you'll find, but it's clean, and we make good runs. It's 5,000 Ru per person for the transit to Cassida. We'll be taking on other passengers as well, so it'll be 2 people to a room. I hope that's all right. The man flicks open his queue and looks at it for a moment. There's a slight shift in his expression, a flicker of recognition. Then he looks up at her and says, there's a liar aboard your ship, right? Ayati's smile turns to a frown. Yeah? Though she mostly keeps to herself, if that's what you're worried about. And she gives him an appraising look. Unless there's a reason you wouldn't want to share a berth with a liar. It's his turn to smile, and he says, No, nothing like that. In fact, having a liar aboard is a selling point, especially this liar. There are 6 of us in total, but we would like to pay the full price for all your rooms to ensure our group is the only one you carry. How many berths do you have? Ayati's eyes raise. Oh, well, we've got 6 spare rooms, so we're going to take on 12 passengers and whatever low berth passengers we can find as well. Also, do you know Sejana? When you say especially this liar, it really sounds like you know her. How many low berths do you have, and what's the going rate, he asks, ignoring her question. 20 low berths at 2,200 Ru apiece for the passage, she says. Right, he says, his fingers dancing over his queue. If my math is right, and it is, that's 104,000 Ru all told. It's rounded up to 115 for discretion. What do you say? Ayati stares at him for a long moment, unsure what to say. Then she responds, I'll have to vet it with my captain, but I think we got a deal. I'm Ayati Kailana, by the way. I'm the Wolf's pilot. Mac, the man says, extending a hand that consumes Ayati's as they shake. Then he leans back and says, now that we've got business out of the way, can I buy you a drink, Ayati Kailana? Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or support me on Patreon at patreon.com/errantadventures. You can also buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on all the socials is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the deep, liars.